Most people completely overlook this. The largest fashion retailer on earth spends almost nothing on advertising. And that isn't a marketing gimmick, it's the entire reason the business makes billions of dollars a year. While its competitors spend fortunes on celebrity campaigns and seasonal ad blitzes, this company built one of the most profitable retail machines in history by doing almost the opposite of everything the fashion industry teaches. Here's what's actually going on behind the scenes at Zara. This matters because Zara isn't just a clothing store, it's a case study in how speed, not size or spending, becomes the deepest competitive advantage a company can build. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly how a Spanish company with no celebrity endorsements and almost no traditional advertising became the crown jewel of a corporation worth tens of billions of dollars, why competitors with far bigger marketing budgets have struggled to copy it, and why a company that pioneered fast fashion in America just went bankrupt trying to compete with the same forces that made Zara strong. Everything in this video is drawn from Inditex's own published annual financial results, industry retail analysis, and documented business history, not speculation or insider claims. This is educational content, not financial or investment advice, and nothing here should be read as a recommendation to buy or sell any stock. Business outcomes depend on execution, timing, market conditions, and decisions made far outside the scope of what we can cover in one video. Let's start with the scale of what we're actually talking about, because most people underestimate it entirely. Zara's parent company, Inditex, pulled in nearly 40 billion euros in net sales in its most recent fiscal year, with a gross margin above 58%, an extraordinarily high figure for physical retail. Net income landed above 6 billion euros, and the company was sitting on an 11 billion euro net cash position, meaning it isn't just profitable, it's essentially debt-free while running over 5,400 stores across more than 90 global markets. Zara alone, including its home goods line, generates more revenue than every other Inditex brand combined. But that's only part of the story, because the real question isn't how much money Zara makes, it's how a clothing company, with almost no advertising spend, became this dominant in the first place. The answer starts with speed, and it starts in 1975, in a small storefront in A Coruña, Spain. Amancio Ortega, a man who left school at 13 to work as a tailor's assistant, opened the first Zara store after building a small clothing manufacturing business with his family through the 1960s. The original concept was almost provocatively simple. Take the styles appearing on high-fashion runways, reproduce them quickly and affordably, and get them into stores while the trend was still fresh, not months later when the moment had passed. That single insight, that fashion is perishable and speed itself could be the product, became the foundation of everything Inditex would eventually build. By the time Ortega stepped back from daily operations in 2011, his stake in the company had made him one of the richest people on the planet, worth tens of billions of dollars, built almost entirely on a single idea: get dressed faster than everyone else. Here's where things become genuinely interesting, because that original idea from 1975 evolved into something the entire fashion industry still struggles to copy today. The industry standard for taking a garment from design concept to store shelf has historically run 6 to 9 months. Zara's internal target is 2 to 3 weeks. To understand why that gap matters, picture Sarah, a hypothetical Zara shopper in London. She sees an outfit trending online on a Monday. By the following week, a version of something similar can realistically be sitting on a rack in her local store. Not because Zara predicted the trend months in advance, but because its entire operating structure is built to react to it almost in real time. This becomes even more important when you realize how that speed is actually engineered. At Inditex's design headquarters in Arteixo, Spain, hundreds of designers work alongside market specialists and, crucially, direct feedback from store managers around the world. Store managers report daily on what customers are trying on, what they're asking for, and what's sitting untouched on the racks. And that information reaches designers within about 24 hours. Most retailers make big bets on a design 6 months out and hope they guessed correctly. Zara makes small bets constantly and adjusts almost immediately based on what's actually happening at the register. But there's another factor that makes this speed possible, and it's a decision that goes directly against everything the rest of the apparel industry has done for the past 3 decades. While most fashion brands chase the cheapest possible labor by manufacturing in Asia, Zara kept a significant share of its production in Spain, Portugal, Morocco, and Turkey, deliberately close to its own distribution hub, much of it within roughly 300 miles. This is more expensive per garment than manufacturing in Southeast Asia, but it means finished goods can travel back to the Artesio Logistics Center and out to stores worldwide in days, not the many weeks required to ship from across the globe. The ocean is a vast blue mirror reflecting the secrets of a passing gale. RFID chips embedded in security tags give headquarters real-time visibility into exactly what's selling in every single store, worldwide, at any given moment. The higher manufacturing cost is, in effect, the price Zara pays to buy speed, and speed is what actually drives the business. Understanding this leads directly to Zara's second major strategic decision, and it's the one most people notice first without understanding why it works. Zara spends a strikingly small percentage of revenue on traditional advertising, compared to competitors who spend several percent of sales on marketing campaigns. Instead, that capital gets redirected into two places: prime real estate in the busiest shopping districts on Earth, and the speed infrastructure we just covered. The store itself becomes the advertisement. A flagship location on a major shopping street generates more brand exposure through sheer foot traffic and window displays than most paid campaigns ever could. And unlike an ad campaign, it keeps generating that exposure every single day the doors are open. Picture Michael, a hypothetical retail analyst walking down a prime shopping street in any major city. He doesn't see a Zara billboard. He sees a Zara storefront occupying one of the most expensive pieces of retail real estate in the city, restocked with new arrivals twice a week, which is itself the marketing message. Something new is always here, and it won't be here long if you wait. Who actually pays for all of this? And why does it work as a business model, rather than just a nice idea? The customer pays a price that sits deliberately above true discount retailers like Walmart's clothing lines, but well below premium or designer labels, occupying a specific middle position economists sometimes call accessible aspiration. Close enough to what's fashionable right now that it feels current, priced low enough that buying something you'll only wear for one season doesn't feel like a wasteful decision. That pricing tier is only sustainable because the cost savings from not paying for celebrity campaigns or 6-month advertising cycles get funneled directly into the supply chain speed that makes the low markdown rate possible in the first place. It's a closed loop, less spent on convincing people to want something, more spent on making sure the right thing is already sitting on the rack before they walk in. That last part isn't an accident either, and it's arguably the most psychologically clever piece of the entire model. Zara deliberately produces less inventory than projected demand. Rather than manufacturing huge batches of any single item and marking down whatever doesn't sell, and rather than gambling that months-old forecasts stay accurate, Zara ships small batches frequently and lets actual in-store demand, not a forecast, decide what gets produced next. The result is genuine, unmanufactured scarcity. If a shopper sees something they like, the rational move is to buy it now, because there's a real chance it won't be there next week, and there's no guarantee an identical restock is coming. This isn't a marketing trick layered on top of the business. It's a direct byproduct of a small batch, fast reaction supply chain, which is exactly why it feels authentic to shoppers rather than manipulative. The strategy also dramatically reduces the need for the deep discounting and clearance markdowns that eat into margin at most other apparel retailers, which helps explain that unusually high 58% gross margin we mentioned earlier. Picture Emma, a hypothetical buyer for a traditional department store chain, forced to commit to bulk orders months in advance and then discount whatever doesn't sell come season's end. Zara's buyers are making a fundamentally different bet. Small, frequent, low-risk orders that can be adjusted almost weekly based on what's actually happening on the sales floor, rather than one enormous high-risk bet placed half a year before anyone knows if the trend will still be relevant. Most people stop the analysis here, assuming any competitor with enough money could simply copy this model. But there's a company that tried to compete in this exact arena and lost badly, and understanding why is where this story gets its sharpest lesson. Forever 21 essentially pioneered mall-based fast fashion in the United States, built around the same core promise of cheap, trend-driven clothing turned around quickly. At its peak in 2015, the company was pulling in over $4 billion in annual revenue, with more than 40,000 employees. But Forever 21 built its speed around low-cost, distant, offshore manufacturing rather than proximity, and it built its growth around aggressive mall expansion rather than a tightly controlled real estate and inventory strategy. When online-first competitors like Shein emerged, with revenue reaching an estimated $38 billion in 2024, and Shein's own supply chain capable of moving from design to shipped product in as little as 3 days, using an even more digitized and algorithm-driven production system. Forever 21 had neither the proximity manufacturing advantage of a Zara nor the pure digital cost advantage of a Shein. It filed for bankruptcy in 2019, was bought out and slimmed down, and filed again in 2025, losing over $400 million across its final 3 years before shutting down its entire U.S. store footprint. The lesson isn't that fast fashion itself is fragile. It's that the specific combination of proximity, speed, and disciplined inventory control that Zara built over 5 decades is genuinely difficult to bolt onto a business built on entirely different assumptions. Competition in this space isn't low. If anything, it's some of the most brutal competition in all of consumer retail. But the competitors who struggle most are the ones trying to match Zara's speed without matching the underlying structure that makes that speed financially sustainable, rather than just operationally fast. Here's where the picture gets more complicated, though, because Zara's own model carries real risks and real criticism that are worth being honest about. The fast fashion industry as a whole has been estimated to account for roughly 10% of global carbon emissions and ranks among the largest industrial consumers of fresh water worldwide. And Zara, as the industry's largest player, sits directly at the center of that criticism. The company has introduced sustainability-branded product lines, but critics argue these represent a small fraction of total output relative to the sheer volume the company produces, launching thousands of new designs every year. There have also been documented labor violations in parts of Zara's supply chain in South America, and continued scrutiny of smaller, harder-to-monitor suppliers further down the chain remains an ongoing reputational risk, even after the company overhauled its auditing processes. And competitively, the threat from Shein and similar ultra-fast, fully digital, algorithm-driven retailers is real. They can undercut Zara on price by a wide margin and move even faster in pure design-to-shipment terms, because they're not carrying the cost of thousands of physical stores at all. There's also a structural regulatory risk worth naming directly. Much of the ultra-low-cost online competition has benefited from customs exemptions on small individual shipments, a loophole that regulators in multiple countries have begun actively reconsidering, which means the competitive landscape here could shift again in ways nobody, including Zara, fully controls. There's also a demand-side risk worth naming honestly. A supply chain this fast only works if customer taste keeps shifting quickly enough to justify it. Picture Daniel, a hypothetical Inditex operations manager, watching sales data during a season where trends move unusually slowly instead of quickly. The entire cost advantage of small batch, frequent production depends on demand actually behaving unpredictably enough to reward speed. If shopping habits ever shifted meaningfully toward fewer, more durable purchases, the very engine that makes this model profitable would need to adapt or shrink. So what does the future actually look like for a company this large, competing against rivals with no physical footprint to slow them down? Inditex's own leadership has framed the company's opportunity around a number that sounds almost humble for a business this size. Despite its scale, Inditex still holds a relatively low share of the highly fragmented global apparel market, and it operates in over 200 markets worldwide. That fragmentation is precisely where the company sees its long-term growth, not by out-advertising rivals, but by continuing to out-execute them on speed, and by blending its physical store network with online sales, which have grown steadily as a share of total revenue and now represent a meaningful and rising portion of total sales across the group. The company continues investing billions of euros a year in logistics infrastructure, including new distribution centers, specifically to protect the 2 to 3 week cycle time that the entire model depends on. This becomes even more important when you consider how the online and physical sides of the business now work together rather than competing with each other. A customer can order online and pick up in-store, or return an online purchase to any physical location, and every one of those interactions feeds the same real-time inventory data back into the design and restock loop. The physical stores aren't a legacy cost center the company is quietly trying to shrink in favor of e-commerce, the way many traditional retailers have approached the shift online. They're a live data source, arguably as valuable to Inditex as the transaction revenue itself. In a fragmented industry where most competitors are optimizing for either low cost or brand prestige, Zara has spent 50 years optimizing for a third variable almost nobody else prioritized as heavily: raw speed from design to shelf. So what's the actual lesson underneath all of this? It isn't that cheap manufacturing wins, and it isn't that marketing doesn't matter. It's that Zara identified the one input, time, that its competitors were treating as fixed, and turned it into the variable it could compete on hardest. Every major decision in this business, the nearby factories, the store-as-billboard real estate strategy, the deliberately incomplete inventory, all trace back to protecting that same 2 to 3 week window between an idea and a shopper trying it on. Meanwhile, a company like Forever 21 shows what happens when a business copies the surface-level promise of fast fashion without rebuilding its underlying structure to actually deliver on it. If there's one practical takeaway worth carrying out of this video, it's that the biggest competitive advantage in any industry is often the input everyone else assumes can't be changed, whether that's speed, trust, convenience, or something else entirely specific to your own market. Zara didn't win by outspending anyone. It won by correctly identifying which constraint actually mattered most and building 50 years of decisions around protecting it. If this kind of breakdown was useful, hit like, subscribe for more deep dives into how the biggest companies in the world actually make their money, and let me know in the comments which company you want broken down like this next.